Hello, fellow floss tubers. This is Dina back for my second episode on FlossTube. I would like to thank everyone who took the time to look at my first episode, and thank you, Verpy R, for being my first subscriber. That was such a pleasant surprise. And I'd also like to thank Cross Stitch Graham, who answered my question about how do you end your threads when you have a lot of open space. And I want to thank you very much for referring me to Carolyn Mazzio's instructional video number 23, where she talks about pin stitch. Wonderful. If you haven't seen it, please stop and go watch it. Or maybe watch mine and then watch hers. Anyway, it was perfect timing. Absolutely perfect timing. I had a finish this past week, and I finished the little picture I was making of the dog treats. And it's at the frame shop now, so I'll insert a picture for you of just what it looked like finished, and then when I get it back, I'll show it to you as an FFO before I ship it off. Having a finish opened up a spot in my rotation for a new start. So I went into my stash and looked at what was on my wish list to do next, and I saw a picture that had been on my wish list, and it seemed to be the right time to do it. This is a little picture of what it's supposed to look like. It's just a wedding announcement, and it is by Lavender and Lace, and the designer is Marilyn Leavitt in Bloom. I did one of hers last time, I think. And it's going to be fairly large. It's 228 stitches by 301 stitches, and I'm doing it on 28 count even weave mushroom. So this is my start that I'll share with you, and notice I gridded it. So let's talk about gridding for a moment, shall we? This is the first gridding that I've actually done on a large project, and I will share with you, those of you who haven't done it yet, I'm slow because this gridding on this piece took me 3 days of stitching time. The time I had set aside to stitch those 3 days were spent gridding this fabric. Finally, last night, I decided I was going to start stitching on it, no matter how late it was, because I wanted to get some stitching done. Anyway, this is my start in doing the head. The only change that I plan on making in this photo is that the bride's hair seems to be somewhat blonde. And as you can tell, my hair's not blonde. Never has been. So, has been many colors, but not blonde. That should be the change that I'll make there. But the interesting thing about this picture is that I'm doing it for my husband for our wedding anniversary. We'll be celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary this June. And I'm excited about that. I think that's a good accomplishment. And he's put up with me for a long time. In order to finish it by June, though, I'm going to have to stitch on it more than 1 week a month, which is what I had given my rotation to be. I re-looked at everything I was doing and when I needed them finished. And since 2 of them are gifts for Christmas this coming year, I've substituted one of those weeks for the wedding. And I will have 2 weeks to work on the wedding. So that gives me 2 weeks to work on the Smoky Mountain Christmas that I showed you in my first episode, and 2 weeks to work on the wedding. That'll be my rotation, as small as it is, for a little while until I get this one finished, mainly because I really would like to have it done in time for the anniversary. Well, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about today is a little different. I had mentioned in my first episode that I travel. I stitch when I travel. Put my notes up here so I won't forget anything in my bag. And I mentioned that I might share with you how I take my cross stitch with me when I travel and what I've put together over the years that help that process. And I've got everything laid out here to show you what goes in my bag and how I pack for a trip. And then I would love to hear back from some of you. What are the tools you take or the tips that you've learned to make your cross stitch mobile? I've heard several people that take their cross stitch to work And I've heard several floss tubers say that they will cross stitch on the train if they have a long ride. So I do that too when I'm riding in the car. If my husband decides he wants to go shopping, for instance, in Atlanta, I've spent more than 1 hour in the parking lot in the car cross stitching at REI while he's been in there shopping for his camping trip. So I'd like to share that with you. This is my tote. It's a nice size tote, but it's very soft and it's easily shaped and tucked away. But it's a nice thick tote, so it keeps everything safe. And it has a little closure here, but it's been wonderful for me. I love it. What I want to show you is on the inside, and I hope you can see it here. I'm going to try to turn it. Yeah, I think you can. There are pockets on both sides. So there are 6 pockets inside, and then notice there's a nice big open space. So we're going to pack this bag, and I'll show you everything that I'm putting in it as I go. I may have mentioned, I think I did in my first video, that I like to listen to music or books on tape when I cross stitch, and I really do. So until I found floss tube, that is what I did. I will tell you, in the last 2 to 3 days, when I was gridding that fabric, I had floss tube on the entire time. I loved it. It's my new go-to thing. But in the car, I won't be able to watch floss tube. So I'm going to take my little portable CD player and I put it in the pocket in the side. This middle one is large enough to hold it beautifully. And I take my little adapter for the car that goes in with it. And you can't hear it if you don't have your ear set. So all of that goes in my bag. When I get to the my destination, if we're staying in a hotel or a cabin in the mountains or something, I have to run my CD player on batteries. So I take extra batteries. So now that's packed, ready to go. In fact, that lives in this bag. It stays there all the time. I had to unpack it today before I started this video. So the next thing I want to do after I know that I've got my music or my book on tape is to make sure that I can keep my hands clean while I'm working on my project. I pack these little hand wipes. Wet Ones just happens to be the brand I have right now, but they're any of the alcohol-based hand sanitizers you can get. I like these little packets because you can rip them open. That's a cloth. You have a cloth to wipe your hands with, and they don't leak. And I'm just worried that some of those little bottles of hand sanitizer could leak on my fabric. But I'll put these in a little side pocket here, so they're handy. I can get to them whenever I want. And I don't know about you, but those alcohol-based hand wipes like that tend to dry out my skin. So I wanted to show you, I put my hand lotion in here and I get a little tube of it for my travel, but I wanted you to be able to see what kind I use, so I got my big one that I keep in my stitching room. I think you can read that. This is the hand lotion that my LNS recommended, and the reason she recommended it is it doesn't stain your fabrics. I've been using this for probably 20 years. Have never ever had a stain on my fabric. Now I do wait and let it absorb into the skin before I move on, you know, to stitch. But I will tell you, it's very, very good. I like it. You can find it at Walmart if you have local Walmarts, Kmarts, something like that. But I found it at Walmart, but it's not with the other hand lotions. It's actually over in the pharmacy with the medicated hand lotion. So it's a little different, but works great. I won't put that big one in my bag. I have a little one I keep in here. So the next thing I do too is I put a fingernail file in my bag, because if you get some sort of edge or you know, little place on your nail that can keep snagging on your fabric, I don't know about you, but it irritates me. And so I keep that handy just so I have it. Okay, then the next thing I pack or keep in my bag would be my scissors. How do you cut? Well, when you're traveling, I think it's a little scary to take scissors with sharp points and have them in the car with you. If something were to happen, heaven forbid, but you have to swerve to avoid a dog or a deer in our case, or if you have a fender bender, I would hate to have a pair of scissors be the reason that I got hurt, instead of the wreck. So I have these little collapsible scissors. I think you can see them okay there. And you pull them out and turn them up, and they become your scissors. So you can do that. I really like these when I travel for when I get to my destination, because then I can leave them open. I don't have to, they just close like that. I don't have to open and close them every time I use them, when I can lay them on my table. I have a second option for you for cutting your threads while you travel. This is a necklace. And I'll try to put you a picture in here to make it maybe something you can see a little better. But for now, I'll put the medallion up here. If you can see these little edges, they're not sharp to the touch. They're protected. They have an outer rim that you can see there's a gap in between, but when you run your finger around here, you only feel this one that's wider. But inside each gap is a little blade. It's like a little disc in there, like a cutting disc. So when you take your thread and run it across there, it cuts your thread. So in a car where you don't want things to fall, you can put this necklace on and just wear it around your neck. I've actually worn this through an airport and wore it on a plane. And I like these. These are cute. So those go in the bag as well. Then I have a little Orts bag. It's really quite cute little bag. It's collapsible, but it'll open up. It's a little square bag. I'm sure y'all have them. Y'all have seen them. I have been known at times to put my scissors in here too. These little scissors, the collapsible ones. Anyway, when you're done with it, it folds flat. It keeps all your little threads captured in there till you get home. And it's really easy to store in my little bag. So that's great. Then I have my needles and my needle threaders. And this is a little cute little thing my husband got me one Christmas. It's magnetic. So it keeps my needle minders and my needles in there without them falling to the floor. I learned that lesson the hard way. I had my little threader with me and I was cross-stitching away on a trip and I accidentally dropped it. I have a little arthritis and so my grip goes on me sometimes, and this is so thin it's hard to know that I have it in my hand, and so I dropped it. I could not thread another needle until I stopped, or I was going to have to join the lick brigade. So I always take 2 needle threaders, even though I have it in here, because it's when I'm holding it that I may drop it. And that way I don't have to quit stitching until we stop somewhere. So I have always carried 2 now, and I always carry multiple needles because they tend to break on me for some reason. I must be hard on them, but I thread them so often that eventually the little eye will break on one side. And I don't want it to snag my fabric. So I take plenty, and this fits in one of those little side pockets just fine. The next thing I do is I take a pair of readers with me. The interesting thing about these is that I wear contacts. However, if I need a magnifying glass, I can put these readers on with my contacts, and then it acts like a magnifying glass, and I can really see the linen better. So I always keep a pair in my bag just in case I need it. And 2, if I don't want to wear my contacts all the time, then I can wear those while I stitch, and that'll be just fine. So now, what do you do with your pattern? That was the biggest problem for me, I will tell you. Trying to hold it and my project at the same time in a car, because if you put it on the seat, it falls off. If you put it on the dashboard, it doesn't always stick with the, the magnetic piece. And I found a gadget, and I have a picture that I'm going to put in here for you that kind of shows it in use. But it's actually a leg easel. This is what it looks like. Here's the easel part. This holds your pattern. It's kind of a thick pad here. It has a little flap in the back that actually rests on your leg, and the picture will show you that a little bit more. And the straps Velcro attach around your leg like this. So this is around your leg. And when this is around your leg, this little pocket appears. And you can actually keep your highlighter right there with you in that cute little pocket. So this is wrapped around your leg, propped up on your leg. This is holding your pattern. Now, the only thing that was missing in that was the ability to really mark my pattern well, because this is not hard enough. I got this little tiny magnetic board, and I sit it right there on my easel. Then that gives me a hard surface to mark my pattern, and it's also magnetic. So, now I've got a place for my measuring stitch measure counter. So this is my newest addition to my travel bag, because when you fold it all up, it's perfectly flat. Look at that. It's so cool. And it comes in its own little Ziploc bag, so I can keep it nice and clean in the bag. And that lives in my bag as well. Everything you've seen so far lives in this bag, stays there all the time. When it's time to travel, when it's time to go, all I have to add to it is my project. I grab my pattern, and I grab my fabric and my threads. I try to keep these projects in a Ziploc bag when I travel in particular, so if anything happens, we spill a cup of coffee, a soft drink or something, then hopefully that doesn't stain my fabric because I've protected it. This is for my threads. I have several of these little project kits. They're not large at all, but they're generally enough for a project that I'm taking with me. I have one of these that's a little bit longer, and then I have the larger ones that I store all of my DMC in for my at home. But for each project, when I kit a project, I pull one of these and I pull all my threads, and if I have specialty threads, I put them in one of these little containers as long as they'll fit, and they're ready to go. This is when I kit my project. This is what it looks like. And I've gone to larger bags for some of my projects so that my patterns will fit inside the bag as well. But this one was a smaller bag. My husband comes in and says that he's ready to go. Wants to take a little trip up to Atlanta and go shopping. Then I am ready to go with him. And all I have to do is grab whatever project I want to take with me in the car, and within 30 seconds I'm ready to walk out the door. So that works really well for me. Now, when I travel to a destination that we're going to be visiting for a few days, maybe a whole long weekend or a whole week, I add 2 more items to my travel stash. They don't all go in my bag. I have to put them in the car. But if we're driving somewhere, I have room for them. Now, one will fit in the bag. It just makes it a little bit heavier. But since I'm only carrying it to the car and I'm carrying it into the location, it's not too bad. I can handle that. But when I get to the location, I want my board, my pattern holder, and this is what I take with me. It's a smaller version. I have a much bigger one here at the house I use. But I actually have adapted this from a different type of usage. This is a copy aid stand. It's an old-fashioned stand that we used to put our original copy on when we were typing. So if you were trying to type changes to a document or something, you'd put your original here and you'd be typing away. This is before all these word processors and things like that came about. I'm very old. So anyway, I have repurposed this now as my pattern holder that goes with me, or for small projects at home, I can use this one. But I have a larger one that's on my desk and it stays there all the time. So whatever piece I'm working on, the pattern is attached to it. But I did want to tell you this. Oh, and by the way, I made these little needle minders. This is a blingy heart. And this was a former pin that a friend had given me with thimble and needle. I thought that would make a perfect needle minder. So those were two I converted. One with both, they were pieces of jewelry actually to begin with. So the last travel item that I want to share with you is my prized possession for travel. My husband gifted this to me a few years back, and he knows how important it is, because when we get ready to go on a trip and he's loading up the car, he actually has on his checklist my cross-stitch lamp. So I'll show you that. Pardon me for leaning over. This is my cross-stitch lamp. It's a small lamp. It's not that big. Let's see if I can show you. See, it's very lightweight, but it's sturdy, and it does move a bit. I can position it above my work at what level I need it to be at. And what I want to show you is that it is an actual lamp. We talked about in some of our videos I've been watching, many of you have said you never know what the light is going to be like when you travel and you don't have enough light for stitching. I have been known to move lamps from all over the room to the desk to try to get enough light to stitch in a hotel. But with this, I don't have to worry with it because it's its own light source. So it's pretty bright. It reflects right down onto my fabric and my pattern. So it does a great, great job. I really love it. And this opens up when you need it. And I'll twist it so you can see. Ooh, look at that. I'll show it on the pattern there. It's a magnifying glass. So I have a large one of these on my desk here at home where I stitch. And now I can take my little mini version with me, and it saves the day. Oh, I love it. It's just like being at home stitching almost. So this is a really great prize for me. So if you are ever in the market for a little lamp, I think you should get one of these. Anyway, as you can tell, it moves quite a bit. It can go from side to side and goes up and down. The beautiful part about it is it will fold flush like this, just nice and flat. And so it takes up very little room in the car. And we just wrap it carefully in a towel or put it in a padded bag, and we take it with us when we go, especially if we're going to stay anywhere very long. So I'm hoping that some of the things I may have shown you today might spark an idea for you to try something for your travel, and it might even encourage those of you who haven't taken advantage of your travel time to stitch to try it. I hope you don't get motion sick. I'm very fortunate that I don't. I do find that if I sit in the front seat of the car, in the passenger seat up front, I tend to do much better than if I sit in the back seat. I would recommend you try it. You won't know until you do. It captures a lot of time for me. When we're driving to Atlanta for my husband to shop, it's an hour and a half each way, or if we're going to the mountains for vacation, it's a 5-hour trip one way. It's a lot of stitching time that I can capture. So it was worth it to me to develop these techniques, and I hope that some of them might have given you an idea. I'd like to hear from you on what you do. But in the meantime, I have an anniversary present I have to get ready. That whip is calling my name. And until I see you next time, I'll be stitching.